Protests resulting from the murder of George Floyd continue to result in legislation in Washington to ensure that these protests are not in vain. My guest in this segment of Brooklyn 45 will also be talking about her re-election campaign for Congress, and we hope to have enough time to discuss voting in this new normal. Congresswoman Clarke, I should have paused there. Let me pause first. Do I need to pause? Okay. Congresswoman Clarke, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be back with you. Good to see you, Sam.
It's very good to see you. This is not the first time that we've seen protests resulting from the killing of a Black man. What are the differences this time?
I believe that the differences this time is the multi-generational, multiracial nature of these protests. The nationwide manner in which we're seeing protests across this nation and, quite frankly, around the world. And the sustained nature, 3 full weeks of nonstop protesting in every corner of the United States of America. That is what makes this particular moment so transformational.
We know that you have been very busy in Washington. What are the key bits of legislation that we all need to know about?
Well, right now, it's how we recover from being at the epicenter of a pandemic, how we make the American people whole in addressing an executive order to stay at home that has left many financially insecure, made many insecure in terms of being able to access food, many insecure in being able to access healthcare, because with all of the massive layoffs, remember, many have their health insurance tied to their employment. And so right now, our focus, my focus, is making sure that the people of the 9th District of New York are made whole. They have been compliant with the executive orders that have come from the White House, that have come from our governor and our mayor. It is up now to the Congress and the White House to make everyone whole. That means providing hazard pay to those who have been on the front line, our lifeline, quite frankly, our essential workers. That means making sure that everyone is covered in terms of their rent, in terms of their rent arrears, their mortgage payments, making sure that we adequately provide shelter for those who have been insecure in being able to find affordable housing. That means that we make sure that our small businesses are given every opportunity and resource to restart, reignite their entrepreneurial spirit. That means that we make whole our state and municipal governments who, again, by executive order, shut down their economies in order for us to focus on flattening the curve. That is the main focus. That it means getting funding into our educational systems where our children have had to learn remotely at the drop of a dime, and making sure that we're giving them every possible resource to close that achievement gap that will inevitably appear as a result of them having to shift to a new modality of instruction. There's so much work to be done in this moment. We have passed a piece of legislation in the House of Representatives. It means that we cover the undocumented and mixed status families in our communities that weren't covered by the first CARES Act that originated out of the Republican Senate, but has been accounted for in the HEROES Act passed in the House of Representatives. There's a battle waging in Washington, D.C. for decency and for the people. And we have to make sure that the federal government makes good on making the American people whole once again.
I want to talk about your campaign, but what are the key bits of legislation that you have authored or contributed to?
Sure. I am the original sponsor of the Dream and Promise Act that has passed the House of Representatives that would provide for a pathway to citizenship for those who were brought to this nation as children, and for those who we've welcomed here under temporary protected status and deferred enforced departure. I have passed legislation to make sure that in the midst of a healthcare crisis, those who have abused opioids, and this one has actually been signed into law, will receive the treatment and tracking and support to make sure that best practices in treatment of those who are addicted to opioids, that is moved forward in the United States of America. I have introduced legislation to change the way that we go about creating affordable housing in our city, and I actually found out this is a similar problem for other parts of the nation, and that is my Home Act, changing the area median income formula that has left so many unable to access the new developments that have been made and put up for the extreme wealthy, but have left out the working class, working poor, and so many of our middle class families who've been unable to enjoy the new developments that have actually gentrified our communities. My Home Act has been touted by Cranes, New York, and so many in Washington, D.C., that it has now been a part of our recovery package in the House of Representatives as we move forward to looking at how we will stimulate the economy once again. Housing is part of infrastructure, broadband is part of infrastructure, making sure that we have access and equity in all that is being proposed going forward. My leadership has been a part of those pieces of legislation and have been authored by our office. And many of those pieces of legislation have already been passed in the House. We are awaiting the Senate to act. You know that the US Senate is run by Republicans who don't share the values that we do in our community, but we continue to fight and press for these measures to be passed.
Another piece of legislation that you have not mentioned, but is being mentioned in all of the newspapers and in all of the media and in so many homes, we heard it being mentioned in the protests that are still ongoing, that is police reform. What is your position on police reform? And I know that
absolutely.
there's a difference between your position in Congress and the position by those Republicans in the Senate.
Oh, well, there's a major difference in their position. We want to hold law enforcement accountable across this nation. For too long, since the inception of this nation, Black bodies have been targeted by racist police officers for retribution, for brutality, and we all know for death. Our package that we will be passing in Washington next week is a comprehensive package that does everything from banning the chokehold or carotid hold on anyone in this nation ever again. It demilitarizes our police departments so that we're not seeing military tanks and hardware being used against the civilian population. It holds police accountable for all of their actions and brings transparency to the record of abuse that some of our officers have, but have never been made public to the American people and to the various departments from whence they've come and often go to in transfer of their atrocities. It also makes sure that we do a study on Black men and boys and the ways in which law enforcement has targeted particularly the Black men and boys of our community, and looks at ways in which we can legislate. Unfortunately, we have to do this, but legislate to protect our Black men and boys from the racist assaults that they have been subjected to, the hostility, the disrespect that they have been subjected to by some in law enforcement. The package that we have put together, that I've worked on with colleagues, that is now being introduced next week in the House of Representatives, is groundbreaking. It is swift, and it is in response to so much of what has been discussed through this protest movement, and that we have been discussing for generations now, but have the backing of the people to move forward on. And it's quite a different bill than what, unfortunately, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are offering. There will be a negotiation, but we will not negotiate the human dignity, human rights, civil rights, and civil liberties of the people of our communities. And I believe that we have the votes in the House of Representatives to pass this sweeping legislation.
After the elections, we'll have to invite you back to talk about these differences. I know that you're very busy preparing for a campaign for re-election. How is your campaign going?
Well, you know, we have ratcheted up all of our activities, most of which have been either digitally or virtually, in the same way that we're interacting. We want to encourage voters to vote safely, to vote early through early voting, which began last Saturday and will continue up until June 21st. People, of course, Election Day is next Tuesday. We're getting tremendous support across the board through the breadth and depth of this district. And I feel very confident that the people of the 9th District of New York know that I have been working diligently on their behalf, that I have been their voice in Washington, D.C., and that my work is not done on their behalf. We are in the midst of coming through a pandemic. I am now in the leadership of the House of Representatives as vice chair of the Committee on Energy and Commerce that has much of the jurisdiction that will enable us to really turn the page on a period, what I call pre-COVID period, into a more enlightened, transitional, and transformational phase of equity, fairness, and justice, which is why I went to Congress to begin with, to make sure that that is delivered to the people of the 9th District of New York.
Congresswoman Clarke, we thank you for being our guest on Brooklyn 45.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam. I encourage everyone to continue work on filling out that census. We are behind, and it is critical for our power, our respect, and our resources that we have 100% compliance. And the great thing is you don't have to be a US citizen to be able to make a contribution for this generation and future generations to come. So please, if you haven't already, fill out your census and encourage others to do likewise. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and stay blessed.
Thank you. We wish you the same as well. Congresswoman
Thank you.
Yvette Clarke, Brooklyn Congresswoman, United States Congresswoman. Thank you for being on Brooklyn 45. And now it's over to Reggie Brown. And now I believe it's time to go to Don Dre.
Hello, and thank you for watching. Brooklyn 45 is a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we welcome your support. Check out our website, brooklyn45.com, and feel free to donate or share it with your friends and family. Have any comments or questions? Send them to our Facebook, facebook.com/brooklyn45tv. If you have any questions or topics you think we should cover next, shoot me an email over at brooklyn45tv@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching.
Okay, that's Don Dre Bullock. Make sure now that you shoot him some emails and shoot him a Facebook comment or Facebook request. This is Brooklyn 45. On behalf of our team, I'm Sam Tate.